Good evening or good afternoon, everyone. So glad that you are here. Welcome to the Crawford Family Forum and Southern California Public Radio. We are part of the newsroom, and we are the live events group here, the live events platform. We do some of our programs in this venue, and then we do others all over Southern California. I think you've probably heard on air talk about a number of those different programs. Because we're part of the newsroom, this team works with various reporters, and we do programs that are related to their beats and their coverage. I'm Janice Wachi-Hurst, and I'm a producer with the live events team. But our moderator today is our outgoing arts education reporter, Mary Plummer, and more about that in just a moment. Couple of things for housekeeping. One, we're live streaming our program today. We have two cameras set up here, one in the back. We're videotaping it as well, but so that we ask you to put all of your mobile devices on silent, but don't turn them off. You are welcome to tweet out, take photos, send those out to your friends and family who may not be here but might be interested in joining the conversation via social media. The hashtag is @ArtsEd, and the handle is the hashtag is ArtsEd at KPCC Forum. Let's see what else I need to tell you. We're having a Q&A during the program that will happen a few minutes after 2 o'clock. Please wait for our producer with the microphone. We want to be able to get your question and our panel's answer, everything on videotape and on the live stream. We also have two Connect with our Arts Ed team sign-up sheets. There's one at the table in the back. There's one at the check-in table in the lobby. Our arts education team and the education team in general would like to know if you're interested in connecting with them. Leave your email, give your specific interest. We do a lot of reaching out, and we welcome people's comments, and there's a little bit more about that in just a moment as well. We have something new today as well. We have a mobile recording booth. It's in the lobby, and will be manned after the program by our KPCC staffer, Liz Brown, who you've seen walking around here. This is part of our public service mission and our role as journalists. It's another way for us to hear from you. And it's a way to hear especially on a topic that we're addressing in the moment. So we get some very good information and some opinions that way. It's set up in the lobby. As I said, you can try it out after the program. We'd like to have you share your thoughts on these two questions today. How's it going with Common Core at your school? And what still needs to be done? And I think there's been a lot of conversation about that in many, many areas and many arenas, so I'm sure some of you will have something to say. Let's see, what else? Next, I'm going to introduce our public engagement editor, Ashley Alvarado, and she's going to tell you about that little piece of paper that's on your seat, and then I'll come back and tell you a little bit more.
Hi, everybody. I did not mean to match Janice today with my sweater choice. Very, very quickly, I am the reason that there's a paper on your chair. And what we do with this, it's a way to become part of our public insight network, is we reach out to people across Southern California asking you to be sources for our newsroom. If you are a parent, if you're a teacher, if you are an at-home chef, or if you live in a particular part of town, all of these little bits of information about yourselves that you might not think are particularly interesting are hugely important to our newsroom, because when we're doing a story around, say, Common Core, or do you put your child on timeout, or when we were getting ready for the end of the world, we were like, what are you going to do before the end of the world? All of these different kinds of questions, we reach out to you and we ask you, how can we shape our news? What are we getting right? What are we getting wrong? And then at the same time, we give you a direct line into our newsroom. So you will have all of my contact information. And if there's something that we need to know about, you have an easy way to tell me. So if you are interested or kind of interested, please take a moment to fill it out. You can leave it on your chair along with the golf pencil, and we'll collect it at the end of the program. So thank you again, and I hope you enjoy today.
Okay, now I mentioned our outgoing arts education reporter, Mary Plummer. Mary is now, is moving into the position of senior reporter on politics. And going into our election season, this is an incredibly important position for us to be filled with someone as bright and as innovative as Mary. And she's proven that in the past. How many years have you been on the Arts Ed beat? 2? 2.5, okay. In 2.5 years, she's brought to light a lot of issues that were kind of not known about in our reporting or in our thinking about the schools in Los Angeles. The highlights include her story on the shortcomings within LAUSD's musical repair shop. I don't know if you remember that story. It instigated some change in how the LAUSD is dealing with multitudes of instruments that sat unused because they had not been repaired. And another area she has done an incredible amount of work on is the gap between state requirements for arts education and the reality of what's actually happening. So that we just have to applaud her for all the work that she has done in that. And many of you, or some of you, may have been here for 2 of the programs that we did together, live events that we did with Mary. One was on the impact of the music on the brain, about learning from being an infant, from being just a few days old to being quite elderly in your world, and with a focus on how that impacts kids' learning. The second one we did was on the use of 3D printers in the classroom. Was anybody here for that? Oh, well, the video's online. It's a great show. We had kids here running 3D printers in the back. We had lots of samples. It was very involved kids and parents and teachers, which we are also going to do today. So these are 2 programs that we have felt have really impacted our coverage, and Mary's done a wonderful job. But we want to introduce you today to our new arts ed reporter. Her name is Priska Neely. She will cover education in music, dance, the performing arts, the visual arts, all through Southern California. Priska comes to us from NPR, where she was a producer with Weekend All Things Considered. She oversaw film and television coverage for the show and reported stories for the network on entertainment, robots, and space. She was also the web and social media coordinator for WATC. Before that, she was part of the team at NPR's live call-in show, Talk of the Nation, in Washington, D.C. And outside of work, she sings and plays the guitar, I understand. Priska, would you stand and just say hello to everyone? The next Arts Ed program we have that we put together a live event, Priska will be our lead moderator. Looking forward to that. Okay, now, enough of me. I'm going to bring Mary to the stage, and she's going to introduce you to our panel. Mary.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Janice, for that really nice introduction. I really appreciate it. Covering arts education has been such a pleasure for me, and I'm excited to pass it off to Priska, and really excited you're all here today. We have just a superstar panel of teachers here with us today that'll be really fun to talk to. So the focus of today is really examining how the arts are blended into the school day. We're going to talk about the increasing use of arts instruction to help teach other subjects as schools focus on the new learning standards known as the Common Core. So let's go ahead and kick it off. I'd like to welcome Sunshine Cavalluzzi to the stage. She's joining us from Orange County. She's a social science teacher at El Dorado High School in Placentia. She was twice honored at the Grammy Museum. She's an incredible teacher from Orange County. We're really happy to have her. Next, we'd like to welcome Doris Riley. Hi, Doris. Thanks for being here. She is a 6th grade teacher at Rockdale Elementary in Eagle Rock, which is part of LA Unified. We have Carol Tansman. She's a drama teacher who partners with Doris at Rockdale. Carol was one of the first drama teachers to be hired for LAUSD's elementary arts program, and she actually co-wrote the drama curriculum for the district. Interesting fact, Rockdale is one of 10 different schools that Carol teaches at. She's a traveling drama teacher, and she teaches over 2,500 students per year. So she's got her hands full. And then we've got Dingai Tadena. We'd love to welcome her to the stage. She's a math teacher at Hawthorne High School, which is south of Inglewood, where she teaches 9th through 12th graders. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for being here. We'll just give a second to get the mics adjusted here. Just bear with us. So we're going to kick off the conversation here with a couple of definitions to kind of talk about what we're talking about. And if I could turn to Sunshine here to talk to us about, remind us exactly what the Common Core is and how different it is from previous teaching methods.
Sure. I think the Common Core is complicated and simple at the same time, but I would say it's really grew out of this idea that our modern students have the information of the world in their pockets on their cell phone. So maybe it's less important what they know and what they learn, and more important how they learn. So Common Core at its best says, let's look at the skills our students are developing and not just the content that they're being taught. Are we teaching them to be creative thinkers? Are we teaching them to be digital citizens who understand the responsibilities that come with using the internet wisely and well? Are we teaching them to communicate in written form, in oral form? Are we teaching them to listen as well as to speak? And then lastly, are we teaching them to be critical thinkers as well as creative ones? And I think the difference, the change to that would be that previously it was more about just content. Do you know the answer? Or more specifically, could you pick the right answer in an A through E multiple choice format? And so we had great parrots and maybe not such great analysts coming out of our classroom. And Common Core says, let's teach them to ask why and how. So we know they can look it up on their phone. Let's make them want to look up the answer on their phone. Let's make them engaged and involved citizens of the world who are better prepared for the skills that their employers are going to demand from them.
Right, and for a bit of national context, so the Common Core has been adopted by over 40 states. It's been around for about 5 years. California, of course, has adopted, and we're seeing it roll out through classrooms. Carol, could you explain to us arts integration? In an academic sense, what does that term mean?
Well, there are two ways basically to disseminate arts education to children. One is called discrete arts education, in which a content specialist, a drama teacher, an art teacher, gives the standards-based arts lesson that can be assessed. And the short form is art for art's sake. Then there is arts integration, and arts integration can be done 3 different ways. One in which the classroom teacher teaches their content, math, social studies, and then also chooses an art form with its standards to tie into the project that they want to do. Then there is the arts specialist, like myself. We can integrate into Common Core standards. So when I teach improvisation, I can also, and do, teach standards-based language arts, setting, character, plot. Then there is co-teaching, and this is what Doris and I will be talking about, where Doris teaches the academic aspects of a much larger project than just a couple of weeks. And then I come in and I'm working on the drama portion of it. And to me, that definition is predicated on the fact that neither one of us could do this project on our own. We need each other.
That makes sense. Great. So, during my time on the arts education beat, which has been about 2.5 years, increasingly I've seen that school districts all around Southern California are allocating funding for arts integration. They're investing in professional development to explain to teachers, why this type of teaching is effective, what it does exactly. So we're going to get a chance to hear from everyone about how this is working at their schools. But to start out with, Sunshine, can you talk to us about when arts integration first started being used at your school and what got you started with it?
Sure. For us, arts has really been a part of what we do for a pretty long time. And I happen to teach at a school that has a high percentage of students who are artists in some form. We have a large band, we have a large choir, we have a large theater program, we have a large visual arts program as well. So my students are interested in art. So for me, this wasn't really about some outside politician said I had to do this in my classroom. It was about my students came into economics, shockingly enough, thinking it wasn't going to be any fun. And they came out of band and they were so excited about the 2 hours they'd spent marching and playing music, and then they went, oh, okay, now we're in econ. And it was, well, how do I get that same enthusiasm and harness it into what I do? This is a kid who will spend 4 hours on one corner of a painting, but is reluctant to spend 55 minutes learning something that I love. So how can I make it something that they want to do? And then it was very obvious, well, let me use what they do love to teach what I love, and we can kind of meet in the middle. And it'll make it more exciting to learn, and they still learn the content. In many ways, they learn it better because they're more engaged. So for me, this has been, as long as I've been teaching, I've been trying to do this. And then the new kind of philosophy, and I hate to really use the word Common Core because I think it's so loaded, but I think how about good teaching, right? So there's more permission now to just do things that are good teaching, and that has enabled me to do more than I felt like I was able to do before.
We have some video clips of a project that you worked on with your students. So it's 2 clips that are PSAs. Can you tell us about that assignment and how it worked?
Sure, I'd love to. So this is a piece that is part of a unit that I do in economics that I call a global perspective, where we look at what does wealth and poverty look like around the world. And we acknowledge that there are very real issues of poverty in our community as well as around the world, and look at what are some of the underlying causes. And then what I ask my students to do is take that knowledge that I've given them and apply it and create with it. So they need to pick one root cause of poverty that they're passionate about. And it can be anything we've discussed, or it can be something they research on their own. And then they have to design a fictitious charity to address that root cause of poverty in some micro way. So they don't have to solve world hunger, but they can look at, well, how could we tackle hunger in our community? And I ask them to really be mindful of what could kids do, as well as what could teenagers like themselves do, as well as what do people have to do, what do governments have to do. And once they've outlined the structure for the charity, then I ask them to create a video, a 30-second PSA, that promotes their charity as if it were a commercial for their charity.
Great. Let's take a look and we'll talk some more.
I'm going past the blinds of closed windows. I'm going find a place where life still shows.
These are really great. I love that this is an econ lesson. It's really great. Talk to us about what piece of that was kind of matching the standards that you needed to hit as an economics lesson, and what piece of it was an art lesson.
Sure. Well, clearly the content of it is tied to our economic standards, things like choices, things like supply and demand, pricing and inflation, and relative value of things. So an empty ink cartridge that we think of is trash, being a quarter of a pair of glasses, is very much directly economics in action, as well as, again, choices that people make underline all of economics and opportunity cost and things of that sort. And then the art piece of it is, how do you make that compelling? So we do spend some time in class talking about what works. What are your visuals? How do you tell a story with as little text as possible, right, but still convey stuff? How do you use statistics to support this point that you're trying to make, to validate it? So it's, as well as art, it's research too, and good presentation. But the art piece is, of course, thinking about how do you tell the story in a way that makes the audience want to respond. And then also thinking about what are you asking, or what message are you trying to convey? Because certainly some art is about an ask. You want your audience to respond in some way, and some is just about an artist wanting to tell a story. So how do you tell your story?
Great. Thank you. Doris and Carol, I want to bring you into this. You all have been working together for more than 10 years. We have a photo, I believe, of a Greek mythology project that you both worked on together.
That was last year's project, yeah.
Great. Can you talk to us about how this came about, but also how your relationship has kind of formed over the years working together?
Do you want me to go?
Go ahead.
Well, the sixth grade curriculum is ancient civilizations, so Greek civilization is one of them, and we just decided, I talked to the teachers, and we decided we would do there were two sixth grade classes. We do two different myths. I wrote a grant. I was able to hire Passato Action Theater. They choreographed the war that starts Theseus and the Minotaur. And those costumes, that was part of their homework, their research assignment. They had to research clothes and costumes of ancient Greeks. Doris?
And they actually did research reports. So this was months ahead of when they had to change some of the, or use that information in their making their costumes, creating their characters. They used all of the information that they learned and put it to use, and they were very happy. Carol and I got to work together many years ago when she came, and as the itinerant drama teacher, she actually taught me and some of the other teachers how to teach drama to our students. So she taught us how to teach foundational lessons, things that I thought, there is no way I can do this. I don't know how. I'm so embarrassed. My students are going to know that I have no clue what I'm doing. But through the years, with her help, it just transformed not only me, obviously, but my students, where now they know, now years later, you talk to a group of third, fourth, fifth graders and you ask them, give me a tableau here and do an improvisation there, and they absolutely know what to do. There's no question. So it's been a great experience, and their test scores have gone up over the years. It's been amazing how using the arts to teach content has changed them into critical thinkers and problem solvers.
And we should explain, so Carol, you're there once a week at her school,
Yes.
is that right? Tell us
Yeah.
a little bit about how the logistics work.
The LAUSD, which, please, let's give them credit, they have 17 years ago started this program. There's dance, music, art, and drama in the elementary school, so the only public school system in the country, and we still have that. Yes, there was a 30% cut when the economy crashed, but a 70%, we kept 70% of it. So I have 5 schools in the fall, 5 schools in the spring, so I have my Monday school, my Tuesday, and Wednesday. And the schools are given what's called arts days according to the amount of students in their school. Rockdale is a small school, 350 students. So the district pays for 2 days. So it's the orchestra teacher who's there on Mondays all year long. The school itself has believed in the value of it so much that parents fundraise, and it's a struggle. It's a Title I school. The staff has voted not to have an aide. They have 5 aides instead of 6. Everybody sort of gives a little bit so that they can then, quote, buy me. So I'm there all year long on Thursdays. And I teach every student from kindergarten through 6th grade every year. So everybody gets me basically for 8 weeks. They rotate off. Another set of students come on for 8 weeks. And then I work with upper grade 5th and 6th from February to May.
I think what's so incredible about this model is the drama teacher doesn't spend much time, but a lot gets done. Doris, can you talk about how much you take on and how you're able to kind of make that transition when Carol's not there?
Well, we, like, for example, in the spring when we start doing the drama, the play, whatever play they were chosen to do for the year, we spent a lot of time with my students rehearsing, looking for props, making costumes, rewriting their dialogue, practicing. It just goes on and on from there. So that's what we do. We spend so much time doing that, and that is what we do when Carol isn't there. And then she comes and she refines everything that we've done.
Like if people know theater, I'll set the blocking, which is where the actors go, and then they'll rehearse so that everybody remembers. And I'll usually set the basic concept, whatever we're doing.
And my understanding, there's quite a bit of flexibility year to year in what you're covering. Tell us a bit about, there's a Syria project you're working on. I think we have a photo of that to show. It's just in the works, but explain
Yes.
how that'll work.
So this was the sort of the red carpet, and this is a community involvement piece, which is also cool. So it's not just LAUSD. Selma Hayek and Los Angeles Theater Center sponsored a free showing for LAUSD students that wanted to go to see The Prophet, which was her animated movie. And that came out in September, and that was exactly when the Syrian crisis was happening. So we got the free tickets, and MTA will give every student one free field trip pass. So we were able to not even pay for buses. It was all free. And Doris and I talked, and we were talking about how it would relate to the Syrian crisis. Then Doris will take over from here.
Yes, I happened to be trying to, well, as I was introducing the field trip and Syria, where is Syria, I just started talking to my students, talking about the crisis and what was happening to families as they were having to move from Syria and walk and trying to get to Europe. None of the children knew what I meant. And I asked them, well, don't you watch the news? I said, well, raise your hand and tell me how many of you watch the news or get a newspaper at your home. One student raised their hand. They had no clue, and I was completely shocked that they didn't know and didn't understand and didn't know the depth of problem that we were seeing right now. And so as they started researching this, I assigned to them a research project, and now they're in the middle of researching the problem, what the history is, where it comes from, what the families are suffering through, what the European nations are having to do, what's the U.S. role in this, and all those other questions and more. It's been amazing to me to see how they've changed in their attitudes, and now they're even talking to family members, because several of our students come from families that have migrated here. I had one student on Friday told me, my family's from Cambodia. And as she was explaining the project to her family, she learned that her grandfather or great-grandfather had been in Cambodia and had been forced from his home. And had experienced all of that. And as she spoke, there were other students who were making connections. That's true. We do have that history. That is something that that our family has suffered too. So as they're doing that, we're also learning about poetry and listening to the poets, some of the younger poets of Syria, and reading what they have to say and how they are voicing what is happening to them and through poetry. And so now they're excited that they get to write their own poetry, and that's coming up, and talk about their own experiences and their own emotions as they are viewing what's happening and as they're making connections to what's going on with their family. And then in the spring, they will do a living newspaper project that Carol will direct.
Yeah. So I'll come in and I'll have them bring in. They're also gathering dialogue and who wrote the dialogue, who said the dialogue, and pictures and events, and then we'll put together a piece and the students will know. We have to make sure that we tell a story that the audience can understand. That we want it moving. All the things that you would have when you direct a play, but it will come from their research.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
So it's really going to be a 9-month project.
Great. Ding, I wanted to have you talk a bit about what you're doing at Hawthorne High School. I had a chance to come visit your school and talk to students about how you're blending arts into geometry. Tell us how you got involved with that to begin with.
Well, last year, it was my first time to be assigned in an academy called the VAPA Academy, and I thought it was a curse.
Visual and Performing Arts Academy, VAPA.
I'm a math teacher, period. I don't teach arts, and if only I was not thinking of my children, I would have resigned my position at the time. But I am forced to do it. Not that I am forced to do it. I want to do it right, being in the VAPA Academy. Like the title of being a math teacher in the VAPA would be pointless if I'm not going to integrate art. So that's how it started. So we started doing, just in my geometry, the Picasso. So draw some parallel lines. It was a diagnostic test. And why I picked Picasso? Nobody's going to be intimidated about Picasso painting. So that's just it. So it started off like that, and then we started going back. My family, my husband took me to some arts museums here. And when I saw Candice's work, that's when I said, my students can do that better. And it's that belief, I brought that back in my classroom. And, well, at first, it would be a challenge of, so why are we doing this in geometry class? My students would keep asking me. And I said, well, it's a different way of looking arts and a different way of looking at geometry. And then as we tried to do more and more of arts in geometry class, they started looking at, now, what do you see here? They don't see basically a lamp or what. Oh, I see circles over there, spheres over here, square, rectangle, and that's how they see whatever they see now. They put the lens of geometry and arts into it. And then we did the fashion show towards the end, and that was the start.
And the fashion show was a huge hit. I believe was it your district superintendent participated in the fashion show?
Yes, he was very supportive of us. He was new, and when I said, I have this crazy idea of what to do in my geometry class, because I thought at the time it was really crazy. It was very off. And the superintendent said, I don't think it's crazy. I'll be there. So, yeah.
That's great. We have a video I'd like to show that shows the kids working on the fashions in your classroom. Let's take a look. That's great. Really great. Dang, talk with us about how students responded to this. What sort of reactions did you get when you introduced this?
Well, at first they have to pick a teacher to be their models. That would be their first choice, because I want them to learn to own it. Usually teachers would be always dictating what we want our kids to do, and then this time I want them to be the one calling the shots, and the teacher are the one obeying and following what they want. Plus they get to explain why, and it was a great experience for them. Working on the same project, and sometimes if they have 6 students in one group and they have 6 different ideas and 6 different designs, and you watch them, either the group falls apart or they come together. And sometimes we experimented, I grouped them like all smart kids, and these were the last kids that have one dress formed, because they cannot let go of their design. While the other ones that has one leader and the 5 followed, on the second week, they already have something formed. But as they see everyone unfold their own project, then they were challenged. And then they would say, oh, mine is ugly, I need to make it better. And you get to change. Sometimes you see kids, the group of kids who would have the original design, and they would just totally forget about it. And on the last week, it's a different design. And I allowed them to own that, experience that, be frustrated. They fight, they love each other, they complain. But I think it's more of a learning skill, and I tell them, in life, you will not get to love your boss all the time.
But, that's also the creative process. Anybody who does any kind of arts understands that, you get frustrated, it doesn't work, and if you have to work with a group, You have to listen to other people. And that's also 21st century skills in Common Core.
Yeah.
Because nowadays, in any job that anybody has, you have to work with a group. You have to learn to communicate. You have to learn to
Yeah.
cooperate. You have to
Proactive,
critical
right.
thinking.
Yeah.
You have to say, well, my idea might work better because of this. That's critical thinking. So that's the skills that all of this.
Yeah. Some students are just a silent worker, like they are just documenting, and at that moment that they are just doing, they may feel that they are quote unquote useless in that group. But when they get to present their project in form of the video and everything, now, oh, so you took that picture? That was beautiful over there. Like the model would just give them all those comments. And the parents are very into it. When we were invited to a gallery to have this show for the second time, early this school year, the parents were like all out. They were all there. We packed the venue too. And I think if the kids are proud of their work, the parents are even more proud of the kids' work.
That's great. Would like to open this question up to everyone. You know, when we talk to national experts, they tell us that California is kind of on the leading edge across the nation of bringing the arts into the school day, of blending the arts into Common Core lessons. Why are the arts so effective at this? What's your take on why, you know, art and Common Core goes so well together?
I think it has a lot to do with the creative process for one, but also it's analyzing what they're doing. They don't even understand that that's what they're doing. They assess what they want, how are they going to get there, what are the materials they're going to need, and then produce something creative. And then you can bring in the content that you must teach, Common Core, and ask them to think about it in different ways. Well, you did this over here, you created this. How is this lesson or this article that you're reading like that over there? And it helps them to transfer their learning from one area to another. It helps them to think about it in a different way. As Carol was saying, and about working in groups, they have to learn how to do that, to create something, and then to revise it and make it even better when they see what everyone else has done. It gives them ideas. They go on, they move on, and it creates a momentum that just, it really does go through the whole year.
I think it's also very empowering to students because then first of all, there aren't necessarily prescribed right and wrong answers, which I think is very comforting. You know, and even my personal kids, when they came home from kindergarten, would say, well, you know, my teacher said there's no mistakes in art, so I can do this. There's no mistakes in art, there's just what you do. And I think if you're truly an artist, you know, you might not always agree with that philosophy with your own work because we're very critical of our own work, but I think for kids saying, I'm good at this. I might not think I'm good at geometry, but I know I'm good at art. I know colors, and it gives them then that strength to come in and say, this is okay, and this isn't something where I'm going to be wrong because it's my work. And I think as well, it empowers kids because, especially teaching teenagers, it's hard to put yourself out there and to say, this is who I am. It's hard to be wrong. It's hard to be embarrassed. It's hard sometimes to really, you know, kind of walk your truth and own who you are, but by bringing art into non-traditional places, you tell kids it's okay. This is who you are, and you're going to do this thing creatively where there isn't this set, you know, right and wrong answers. So just be you and bring what you have to share, and I think that's very empowering too, especially to kids maybe who haven't always been successful in a more traditional place.
But also, why California? Why California? Hollywood, Silicon Valley. I mean, we have a huge tradition of innovation in sciences and arts. Boeing, JPL is here. And so I think that filters down. And I don't want to toot LAUSD's horn, but 17 years ago, we were one of the first elementary programs to have dance and drama along with art and music. And that has filtered, that was all around the country, that was known. May not have been known in LA, but you know, it really, it was, we have a new arts, executive arts director who came from DC, and he said, you know, we were jealous of Los Angeles. So we had some visionary thinkers in the arts, and I think because of the proximity of what everybody does here.
Right. And we should mention, not just in LA Unified, but across the state in California, dance, visual arts, music, and theater are required in the education code. Some districts see them less than others, but it is something that, on a statewide level is valued. So, we know that research shows us that art in schools can increase, student engagement, attendance. Sunshine, I remember when you and I talked previously, one thing that you said was, once you've reached them, you can teach them anything. Once you've reached them, you can teach them anything. Can you all talk about, do you see direct results from doing this type of teaching? What does it actually do for students?
Well, I think what I see more than anything is kids being excited to come to class. And that's what I mean by once you reach them, you can teach them anything. Attitude is everything in instruction, and anyone who's a teacher knows that. If you have a kid who comes in with a positive attitude, they're willing to learn. And overcoming that hurdle is our biggest obstacle as teachers. It's not our content. It's making them excited, making them enthusiastic about what they want to learn. And so that's what I see is that level of, hey, my art doesn't just have to be what I do in fourth period. Whatever I'm good at gets to be what I do in fifth period and sixth period and second period. And so that, I think, makes a difference. And I think it lasts longer. I think if all of us think about our educational experiences, what do we remember doing in school? It's very rarely, oh, you know what I remember is that math test that I took in April of my sophomore year. We remember the projects. We remember the fun things. We remember what empowered us. And so it does make that curriculum stick, or at the very least, that sense of, I was good at that. And so if I was good at that in class, then I can be good at that in other places.
Right.
It's also, I'm sure every single person in this room had to do a report in high school or elementary school, right? How many people stayed up all night in college, all-nighters, to finish it? Because, what's the point? The point is to get a grade in the class, and only your teacher's reading it. Well, Doris's kids, are doing a report, but it doesn't end with doing the report for Doris or for the kids in the class. They're going to take that. They're going to create their own project. They're going to put their emotions in it. They're going to get to say something about it so that the research isn't siloed. It becomes part of their entire learning, and what they learn that they have a voice, they can make a difference, but they have to have research to back that up.
Let's talk about, the time and the cost piece of this. How, as teachers, do you manage that? I did a story for NPR recently talking about how expensive it is to be an art teacher. How do you balance that?
We use recyclable materials because, there may be some budget for the arts, but arts in geometry, I don't think there is any budget for that. So that's why we focus more on recyclable materials. And I don't also want to deal with parents complaining, spending too much in a project in my class. If I would be a parent, I would also complain. We use recyclables, and there are some few students who would be willing to spend, but I just force into them that, no, you're not using that. You're only using this. And it's wonderful how kids can create something out of nothing, basically, like nothing but hard work and creativity.
But bang for your buck. There are 4 drama teachers in the room, and then there's a music teacher here. So we teach among us probably 10,000 students, and we get paid a regular teacher salary. But bang for your buck, if Doris is teaching 30 kids and I'm teaching 2,500, the bang for your buck in terms for the district is not huge. And so that it's really cost effective to share and to rotate and to work together. So that, so I think that kind of is just, it's sort of old school thinking that it's going to be expensive. It's not going to be as much money when you look at how many students we can reach.
And I think it's in the new school thinking as well of all the free sources that are available to students on the internet. They can find pictures. They don't have to go and develop a picture. They can print it out using resources that are relatively inexpensive. But also, our school is a digital media arts academy, and so we have grants that have funded a lot of cameras and things that are available for students to use so they don't have to spend their own money, and neither do I. But also our video teacher put together a tip sheet for kids. How do you take great video with your smartphone? Is most of them have that, and that again is a resource. It's obviously not a free one, but it's a resource they already have. So we spend a lot of time in our class talking about what's available to you to use that you don't have to spend extra money to get, and neither do I. And there are, incidentals, but it also, I feel like, if I'm spending $10 on a box of markers that makes 38 kids excited to come to class, speaking of bang for your buck, it's money really well spent, and if we can recycle materials, more is the better to do that.
But I think Doris can speak to the principal aspect of it in terms of, the principals have to be willing and encouraging of giving teachers time to teach the arts.
Yeah, in my classroom, we integrate the arts, but I also do an approach called design-based learning, and we use a lot of recyclable materials, and each month the students have a challenge that they must produce using just what we call happy trash. And and the challenge, it's really, really part of their learning, because they have to learn how to use trash to create something. That's part of the critical thinking. How am I going to do this? And I've actually been amazed at what they come up with, because they have to do it in class. They can't take it home. It has to be something that they do. And my principal and my administration have been so supportive in looking at the piles and piles of stuff that my kids have learned how to just shove in the corner when we have visitors. But it's been amazing to have that kind of support. To be able to be creative yourself as a teacher is invaluable, to have that support. I couldn't do what I do without that.
Got it. Let's talk about what obstacles you face at your schools to getting other teachers on board to this type of teaching. I know one piece of it is these lesson plans are not things that you're finding in guidebooks, for example. You're coming up with these on your own time. What are you hearing from other teachers at your school? Is there increased momentum towards this type of teaching, or is it kind of the folks who are interested do it and others don't?
I think in math, it is so difficult to separate the idea that this is how I learned it and this is how am I going to teach it. So when we had those collaboration and I have shared the strategy and what I did, and you see teachers enjoying it, and you would try to ask after some time, oh, have you done this one in your classroom? Some would do it, but some would also say, oh, that's just a lot of work. Because we have the benchmarks. They print the results of our benchmarks, whether they're green, purple, red, right, and illuminate. And we take accountability whether our students are learning our content, like for me, Algebra 2 and Geometry. And as a content teacher, it is more of your responsibility for them to get a good grade and good scores in the benchmark in geometry, because we don't have anything to do with the arts, with the curriculum of the arts. They're not graded or earning any credit in arts by doing some arts in my geometry. So I think it's more of that shift on how we differentiate and use arts in any of its form, whether it's science, math, or biology. I don't know.
The big obstacle around the country in arts education is assessment. You can't give them a little bubble sheet and have them bubble it in. And so we spent an enormous amount of time trying to, I don't want to say prove, but to show teachers and parents and students, principals, that it's called authentic assessment, which is a real life project. And so that authentic assessment is just as valuable as bubbling in your little circles. But that struggle is huge because we don't have specific data, that we can just hand out.
Yeah,
I think for anyone, the two struggles are time, right? That saying, I don't have time to do this because I have to get through all this other stuff. And I think for me, the real renaissance for that in my thinking was going, if a year later I meet one of my government students on the street and I ask him, so how many members are in the state assembly? And he can't tell me that the answer is 80 without looking it up, then it doesn't matter if I took 20 minutes in my class to teach that. If the student's not going to remember it, it doesn't matter that we taught it. And that's what it comes back to what I kind of said at the beginning. It matters that they want to know. And so I think being able to let go of that, and also I think if we ask teachers, what's the most important thing our students learn? For almost none of us is our first answer or our second answer or our third answer content-based. It's I want our students to be good thinkers. I want them to be kind. I want them to be productive citizens. I want them to be voters, in my case, and jurors, and people who care about those around them. And I think for most of us as teachers, that's the answer. And once you remember that, okay, then that's what's first. Then we have to build that in first, and the time for the rest of it comes later. I think that's helpful. But I think the other challenge for teachers is that fear. But I'm not an artist. So how am I going to teach art? I'm not a musician, so how am I going to teach music? I don't know how to make a film, so how am I going to do that? And I mean, for me, the answer, we just dive in. Just try, you don't have to, and then it levels the playing field between you and your students, where I can go to my students and say, I can't carry a tune, but I'm going to assign you to write a holiday carol, and we'll all sing along because, you know, not everybody can sing well, but everybody can sing loud. We're going kindergarten rules here, and that helps. So, letting go of that and putting yourself out of the way in your own, it's terrifying sometimes. It's terrifying to stand up in front of teenagers sometimes anyway, and let alone stand up and say, I'm not good at this, and I'm going to put my own weakness out there for you. Then I think we have to remember we ask them to do that every day. They don't know our content as well.
But there's also lifelong learners. You know, teachers are lifelong learners. So, and I'm sure you did your own research before, and you went to the museum, and then you saw Kandinsky, right? Yeah. So you're educating yourself, and then you're passing on that education to your students. And again, you know how to look up the art standards for whatever, is working with that. So you're doing that part of it. And as you said, there was a digital media academy. So you went to the expert, the discrete arts teacher, and had that person give them the lessons that you didn't feel competent doing. So if we all work together in education, we can create amazing things. It's when everybody is siloed that we can't really progress the way we want it to. And I always think about this. Doris, did you want to say something?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, but when you're done.
I was going to say, that whole thing of you can give a man a fish and he'll eat for a day. You can teach a man to fish, he'll eat for the rest of his life. We can teach kids how to do research, and for the rest of their lives, anything they want to learn, anything they need to learn in whatever job they get, they will have the skills to do that. So I think that's where Common Core is going. That's where arts education is going, without losing the discrete elements of either math and fashion design.
I used dance recently to.
Oh, go ahead.
I used dance recently to just have the kid learn transformation. And then, when you were doing slide to the right, give me that in vector form. And the kids give me in vector form. And if you're going to strictly use math and vectors to explain or coach somebody else to do the dance, will you be able to do it? And they were able to do it. I think when you fuse those two skills together, doing it and at the same time using the term that you have in your content, it works. And they get it during quizzes. Like, remember when we danced? Oh, yeah, that's the dance. And they get it.
One thing that I wanted to add was that for teachers who are nervous about doing this, and I don't have time, is a constant thing that I hear. One of the quick ways of doing it is to discover what your students love. What do they love to create? What do they love to do? What do they want to know more about? And then that gives you a lot of ideas, because they're going to approach you once they know they have the freedom to do that. They can approach you and ask you to do this. Can they do that? It's amazing how many lessons will come to you, and not just lessons, but just following a theme for your year. Like last year, I had a student who really wanted to study what causes hunger and what causes poverty. So everyone he was able to communicate that interest to other students. We kind of looked at reasons, really, but he really kind of spearheaded that, and he had the classroom as a platform. So if you click into what your students really want to learn about, what they're passionate about, then it really, really opens up an amazing door for you and your class.
I think Carol's the only one on this stage who has a technical arts background, so to speak. Can you, the rest of you, talk about how do you get over that fear? How do you, confront your own lack of arts knowledge and teach this stuff?
And I go to people who do know and ask them. So we have a great art department. As I mentioned, our school's really big on the arts. So I go to those people, or I reach out to friends who do it and say, well, how would I do this? But I think, as I just mentioned, for me, it's also saying, I'm okay. I go to my students a lot of the time and tell them, I'm not as good at this as you are. So I need you guys to help me with this. I want to learn from you. Oh, look, you just did that. Show me how you did that. And for me, that's about building that relationship, saying, yeah, I know more about social science right now, at least, than you do. But you know more about music than me, or you know more about movie making than I do, or you know more about singing than I do, or art. So now we're more equalized in that way. And so it was hard, I think, the first time. And then once you realize how much it empowers a kid to be the expert and to say they're going to stand up and take the lead on that, then you go, okay, that's what we're here for, right? Is to empower students. So it's okay if I don't know. But
Yeah, that makes sense. Anyone else?
I just, working with Carol and the other arts teachers that come, I never felt like I had to really go do this a massive amount of research, because they were right there. And I could ask them, and it sparked my own creativity. So that was one huge plus. But also, YouTube's a great teacher. So, that has helped me quite a bit. And just being able to go to them and ask them, and it's been wonderful. And also, my students have taught me things. I didn't know how to do stop motion films until this year, and I learned that from them. So it's good.
Oh, that's great. Thing
I think the moment the kids start to look at you, that you are just on the same page. I may be better in terms of geometry, but in terms of arts, when we use it in my geometry class, we're just all in the same footing. And I do it with them, and I would tell them, don't copy mine, because I want to see a different artwork or art piece. And we put it on our wall, and I think you are inspired, and you get to realize that, oh, I did that. Will I be able to do it again? I don't think so. But at the time, I was good at it. It's that kind of feeling that I share with the students.
Whenever I direct something that's not scripted, the first thing I say, and I'll say this when the first day we meet with the Syrian kids, I always say, I don't know how this is going to look. I can't guarantee this is going to be wonderful, because it doesn't exist yet. We're going to create it together. Your input is just as valuable as my input. And so it becomes, and that's when you're directing it off-Broadway or ensembles. I mean, that's what it's about. It's about everybody working together. So I think that openness to students, when you say, I don't know the answer. Sometimes I'll go, do you like it this way or do you like it this way? And so the kids in the audience would, watching, or Doris will say, I like it that way better. So I think, again, opening yourself and the students to what the artistic process is, which is a lot of, fighting in the dark. I mean, that's what it is.
Right.
So that is the same fear, that if you can understand that isn't fear, but that's the process of learning anything new and creating. That's what it is.
Got it. One thing that we've seen happening, and there's some fear around this happening on a bigger basis, but the idea that as districts invest in arts integration, money for discrete arts ed, as Carol explained, so dedicated arts education to teach you how to play the violin, for example, is shrinking. What do you see happening at your schools? Is there a concern that as we move towards arts integration, we're moving away from dedicated time to learn the arts?
I think, if I'm not mistaken, they have this so-called, they specialize on, for example, for music or dance or theater. And I think it's going to develop more of the artistic person who's going to use arts as its maybe after school career, after high school career, being in college, being as a professional musician. But the good thing about integrating is not actually taking away that funding. It's developing people who would start with the idea that I'm not an artist. Because I think everyone can be an artist. You don't have to go fine arts to be one.
Right.
But there's a danger I have a friend who teaches in a school system in upstate New York, 30 miles north of New York City, and 3 years ago they cut every single arts teacher in the district, everyone, K through 12. So for 3 years the kids had no arts whatsoever. This year they show up the first day and the superintendent goes, oh, guess what? You're all going to arts integrate this year. And we're going to give you 3 hours of professional development so you can do this. A true story. So, but you know, that's very transparent. It means the district doesn't want to you have to put some resources into arts education. But they get to say, well, we're not going to spend any more money, but look, your kids' parents are going to get arts education. That's, you know, any of us think that's going to be a real great arts education for those students? So that danger, and that is the danger with arts integration. And that's why I started with what is discrete art, because when you went to the museum and then you showed your students Kandinsky and Pablo Picasso, you were doing an art strand. You know, you were looking at what art, and look how Picasso uses geometric shapes. So you were analyzing an art piece. That's true arts integration, and it was a discrete lesson in arts. But if teachers don't do that, that's called arts enhancement. So one of my schools, everybody made a reading hat, and they got little strips of things and paper and glitter, and it was lovely, but they didn't do any art standards. So they didn't look at what's 3D sculpture or what's the history of hats. So the danger is, and I think all the arts teachers are very much aware of that, we want true arts integration where there is discrete arts education and not arts enhancement. And that's the fear and the danger that arts integration, not understood by everybody, can go.
I've talked to some teachers too who, you know, classroom teachers being asked to do arts integration who say, listen, we don't have space to dance in here. How are we going to incorporate all of these, all of these different art forms into our classroom when we're already doing a bunch of other things? How do you all see that playing out in your schools? How does that work?
I think it's certainly a challenge, especially, you know, in California, we do have fairly large class sizes, right? So fitting 38 students and desks in a classroom is already an obstacle, let alone saying, okay, now let's just push all the desks outside somewhere so we can dance in here, right? And we run into challenges with lab space for kids to go and actually be able to have time to work on their projects if they're doing, for instance, a PSA and I want to give them computer time. We run into those challenges. So I think it is a real challenge. I don't think it's an insurmountable one, but I think it definitely does require a little extra level of creativity and then maybe some leadership somewhere to say, okay, this is how it's going to be done. Not just do this, but this is how. And certainly 3 hours of professional development is never the answer to pretty much anything, but certainly not to something as complicated as that. So I think time is always such a factor to troubleshoot those solutions before you're expected to implement them.
But it's also a scheduling problem. So if an enormous scheduling problem, but if you can go into your cafeteria and say, okay, it's used from 11 to 1, but from 1 to 2 and from this time, it's not used, or you know, other creative spaces in the school. That's some answers to the space problem. Also, I think in elementary school, not every child, it's K through 6, so not every child will get drama every year. So they may get it in first grade and they may get it in fourth grade. They may get dance in this grade and that grade. And so the cafeteria is available on those days for that. So again, it's looking at the long picture, looking at scheduling. It takes a lot of work. You know, as you said, I mean, some teachers are so focused on what they have to teach that they don't get that the extra work it takes to put these projects together are very well worth it.
Great. We're going to move to Q&A soon, so get your questions ready. But I just wanted to do a kind of final round robin here with everyone. Question for you, how has arts integration changed your teaching? Sunshine, I'll start with you.
I think it's just taken me to a new and more creative place, which has been a lot of fun. So I, became a social science teacher, unsurprisingly, because I loved social science and wanted to share that passion with others. But for me, it's really been this great challenge. Don't just teach something you love, but make it lovable to people who don't come in and share my passions. And it's been a good challenge. I'm not in arts. I can't really draw you a very good picture, and I can't carry a tune, and I think my band teacher, bless his heart, was really happy that I didn't continue band beyond the 8th grade, even though he's wonderful and still a dear friend. I think it was no loss to the flute section when I quit, right? So to not be an artist, but to continue to have to grow and be a learner in that way has really changed my teaching in a way that's made it new and fresh every time, too. And I can do that same assignment, that PSA that we saw, every semester that I do it, I get different submissions. And so that keeps content that might otherwise get wrote really fresh and exciting. And so I've loved that. It's allowed it to evolve as my students have.
Great. Doris?
When I first started teaching, it was really, I hate to say it, I hate to confess it, but, here's the textbook, let's look at the chapter. And after a while of doing that, I just began to think, this is terrible. This is the most boring thing for me as a teacher, and I know I had such restless students, like after lunch. They were just so restless, and, try and read a social studies book and answer questions was terrible. So I started to just really, really listen to what I was, other teachers were doing, and incorporating the arts and incorporating more creative ideas into my teaching, and allowing the students to be creative, to stand up and do. I remember one project that Carol and I did together was having the students read. Do a journal project where they were pretending they were pioneers or settlers or Native Americans, and writing journal entries as though they were those characters. That completely changed, my idea of, this was so much better than teaching a chapter and giving the students a quiz at the end. They really remembered so much more, and I had students come back and talk to me about those projects after they've left me, and that was really one of the highlights of their year. And so that really, really changed my view of what's possible. And seeing how the students themselves discovered how creative they could be and what they were capable of. It was surprising to them and really, really inspiring to them.
Great. Carol, for you on the other side, bringing the arts, bringing
Right.
other
I mean,
subjects into the
I
arts.
can, if I'm only seeing a class for 8 weeks for 1 hour, right? That's 8 hours. I can't do the kind of high-level drama projects that I can do with a teacher. I have another teacher, Miss Alicia Stanko, from another school, and last year we did. It's called The Ice Wolf. It's an Inuit tale, and there were animal characters, and she made these incredible masks with the students because they went and studied the art of the Pacific Northwest and totems and all of that. And I walked in, and I was completely blown away. And when you look at people walked in, I had nothing to do with that. So the classroom teacher can bring what I'm doing up to a whole different level that I just am not scheduled enough time to do.
Yeah. Dingai.
With my students, they probably know the difference, but what inspires me to go do more is when I see a student who's not in my class, or a parent who comes to my class, or a teacher who's not even teaching math, or maybe teaching math, and they come to my classroom, and then they would say that, this is a math classroom? It's not an arts classroom? And, I want to be here. It's that thing. It's the joy of seeing them, that they want to be in your class. And that makes a difference of before. I'm just been like this. I was not born to be like this, but I'm a math teacher. And I think doing arts makes a lot of difference. It's putting life, color to what is used to be dull and boring and most hated.
Thank you. We're going to excuse Dingai from the stage. We have a very special surprise coming up. But as Dingai goes to work on that, we're going to open it up for questions. We've got someone with a mic running around. So if you have a question, just raise your hand and we'll pop over. Just 1 second.
Hi, good afternoon. First of all, I wanted to thank KPCC for supporting these programs. Also to thank Mary Plummer for the incredible work she's been doing. I'm very excited to hear about Miss Neely starting. I know that a lot of recent stories on arts education have, in my opinion, been bad rewrites of articles Mary Plummer has done over the last couple of years. But I wanted to say a couple of things that came up. Number one, Ms. Cavaluzzi said two things that really jumped out for me. At one point, she said very emphatically, "I am not an artist." But then at another point, she said, "I'm not as good at this as you are." I think, and other people here have heard me say this before, but art is all around us. Everybody is an artist. That year that Ms. Tansman described, the art teachers were all laid off and the students didn't get any art. The students got art every single day. They lived with art. They are artists. With those artists that were laid off, weren't able to provide the students is expertise in certain types of art. That's all. And that's very important, and that's why I run an arts education department. I work with a cadre of about 60 professional visual, performing, and visual arts instructors. And finally, Ms. Riley brought up something that I thought was really interesting, which was design thinking. Stanford is doing a lot of work developing design thinking programs, and basically what it does is blur the line between the fine arts, the traditional arts, et cetera, and everyday life. And at the end of the day, I think that's what we need to do, is find out how to build those bridges and help students see themselves at all ages, and teachers too. Every teacher who's made the creative choices that you've all described today are artists, that's obvious. And if we can help them see themselves as artists and appreciate the artistic creativity of others, I think we're doing a good job. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mario, would you mind your title so everyone who doesn't know knows?
Sorry, Mario Davila, Director of Arts Education for LA's Best. We're at 194 Title I elementary schools every day. And along with providing visual and performing arts programming for free for the kids, we also provide science, health and fitness, literacy, computer literacy programming, and supper every day.
Great, thank you. Other questions?
Hi, I'm curious, in your experience...
Could we get, your name and title
first? I'm
first,
sorry,
if you
I'm
don't
Tiffany
mind?
Owens. I'm the Arts Magnet Coordinator at Elliott Arts Middle School, and I'm City of Pasadena Arts and Culture Commission. And,
Great, thank you.
in your experience, what have been the most successful decisions and actions taken by administrators, education administrators, to help smooth the path for successful arts integration? Just off the top.
I think the decision to support creativity in the classroom is the most important decision an administrator can make, and to support good teaching when they find it. So to not just allow it, but to come and say, hey, that was great, or, I really appreciate that you're doing that, or why don't you share this with other people? So I think it doesn't have to be money. It doesn't have to be time, although those things are nice, but just that little bit of encouragement that this is a good thing and it's a good thing for kids, and that, teachers should keep doing it.
No, I totally agree. It's not just throwing money at teachers and at schools. It's really, really owning it and embracing it and allowing. I don't want to use the word allowing, but supporting you as you are experimenting through something maybe you've never done before with your students, and seeing the results and finding the positive and asking you to share with other people. I think that's more important.
Great. Other questions?
Yeah, hi, my name is Tim Moline. I'm a former KPCC when it was KPCS years and years ago at PCC. But my question is, you and I all agree that this is something that's necessary and something that's good. Can you give us an example of when you're trying to implement these kinds of changes and these kinds of programs, where you've had to go to a group like a parents group or a board of education and had success in selling them on it? And then can you give an example of when you had to maybe go to a board of education or a parents group and get really shut down on it and end up being really frustrated because you couldn't?
One thing I can share just from my experience of covering LA Unified, what we've seen there, The school board at LA Unified has been incredibly supportive of the arts. 3 years ago, they passed the Arts at the Core resolution, which was really seen around the nation as just this incredible, amazing accomplishment. But the challenge at LA Unified has really been implementing it. So there's a difference between support and actually, digging out the money, finding it, and supporting it that way. I'm probably most familiar with LA Unified. I don't know has this played out in your district at all, Sunshine?
Not in that way. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
incredibly fortunate. I, heard your question, and my heart hurts for teachers that have had to face that kind of opposition. That hasn't been my experience. Our district has been very supportive, and our parents have been very supportive, and that's a lot of the nature of a lot of them are parents of artists. But I think I would say, it is frustrating, but I think a lot of that, getting around that, comes from front loading, explaining this is why we're doing it. So back to school night, for instance, I talk parents through, yes, this is a little different than maybe the social science class you were in or the social science class that somebody might have with a different teacher, but this is why, and providing that rationale for it, I think, is the best way to avert, anything in the long run.
Great. We want to bring Ding-Ai back up to the stage in case anyone has questions for her. Do we have any final questions? A couple more?
Yeah. Hi, my name is John Pearson. I've been in education for, 100 years, it feels like, and I've been a consultant. I love children, and I believe that they learn facts, understanding, and judgment through the senses, imagination, and emotions. And over the years, I've developed zillions of ways to use drawing, what I call off-road drawing techniques that mimic how your brain actually thinks. And I've spoken to the people who put Common Core together, and they've said the word drawing is used 138 times in the description of Common Core, drawing conclusions, drawing inferences. And I'm thinking, well, why the hell not drawing? Excuse the language. And I found that at the same time kids are learning to read and write, they're loving to draw and talk. But when we put it in terms of art, science, content, all these other things that become legal and whatnot, my brain doesn't have a place called art and a place called science and a place called history. But it does have places called senses, imagination, and emotion. And a lot of what I do is so process-oriented. The children do this all the time, brilliantly, so that childhood itself is a place of genius. And the education, because we divide things, subdivide things, get smart and analytic, kills it. So I'm asking all of you, and anyone who might be listening, since creative is now at the top of their new Bloom's taxonomy, how can they make it actually creative? You guys are doing great, great, great stuff, but how to bring it down so it's all part of just normal, that's how brains think. Thanks.
Anyone want to take that?
When an entire school buys into it for whatever reason, and parents, it goes exponentially. So, I heard what you said, and also the gentleman over there, and I'm thinking, okay, well, how did we at Rockdale, and it's because the teachers were convinced by a few lessons, and they talked to their colleagues, and parents, the kids would go home and get very excited, and the parents would understand. So, again, none of this is siloed. It's when you build a critical mass. And I think we're beginning to build a critical mass, beginning to start a discussion of how can we do exactly what you said. So it's just constant talking and colleagues talking among themselves.
Got it. Other questions? Yes.
Hi, my name's Lynette, and I don't have a title. One question I had was if any of you had any experience on how you've used student knowledge that they're already bringing in the classroom, or their cultural, ethnic background, or even gender identity or sexual orientation into these creative projects, rather than just engaging with what's being provided to them. And then second part to my question is if you also felt or have had experience on how this art integration could serve for students questioning or challenging the actual content that's being taught versus just simply regurgitating it or so on and so forth. Thank you.
Interesting.
Sure. I mean, I think, my curriculum being social science, that's what we're about, right? Is who are we? What do our personal lives bring to inform our position on issues, our position on politics, our positions on economics? And, we view the world through the lens of who we are, of course. And that questioning piece is the most important thing we do as social scientists. So I would say that's, you're in my wheelhouse right now. And I would, of the projects that I do, students are always able to bring their own perspective to it. So when they do the public service announcement that you saw, they choose. Right, what cause of poverty is most resonant to you? And most of the time that's informed by their own experiences or their own opinions. In government, they make civil liberties magazine ads, and those are in the back. They get to choose what civil liberty they want. And oftentimes, again, their choice is informed by their experience. And the other project that's at the back is I ask them, what's the most important characteristic for creating positive change? If you want to go create positive change, what's the most important characteristic for doing that? And then they have to pick a visual that they think embodies that. And again, all that is informed by who they are and what they bring to the table. So I think for me, that's very much part of my curriculum. Anyway, I don't have an assignment that says, right, how do you rage against the machine or how do you, bring who you are for this? But it's, I think, a part of innately everything that we do. So I think making the classroom an open place for that is the easiest way to do so.
Great. I think we've got time for one last question. She's coming around with the mic. Just one moment.
Hi, my name is Jenny Jacobs. I'm a teacher and a theater artist. And I know that a lot of this is still relatively new in terms of the life of core curriculum, but I'm wondering if any of you are seeing any differences or shifts in how students are approaching what's next for them. I know we don't necessarily know what their career paths have maybe shifted into, but any observations on how they're approaching what they want to study, maybe if they want to go to college or what high schools they're aiming for? Thank you.
I would like to address that because after spending a year doing or having drama, dance, visual arts, music, having design-based learning in my classroom, I've been privileged to see where children come in at the beginning of the year to where they are at the end, and it's been amazing. Last year, for example, I had students identify, oh yeah, I want to be, I want to study physics. I want to be a physicist. I want to be a musician. I want to. They come out. They're in the 6th grade, so they come out knowing that because they've been given not only the time and the space to explore that, but also the resources to be able to do those things, to explore those things, that they get to express themselves in ways, and they discover things about themselves. It begins to solidify for them what they're capable of, and because they're able to present it to their classmates, to the school, to their families, they get a lot of feedback. They get a lot of people coming in and supporting them that they didn't know were even out there in the beginning of the year. So it's been very powerful to see that change, and to see where I'm hoping they come back and tell me what their experiences are this year, to hear from them.
But I think I know the child, the physicist child. He was my lighting designer for 2 years because the kids design all the lighting. He was an amazing lighting designer. And so, when he goes off to do physics, the lighting design and being creative, you have to think outside of the box in science. So we can't really, again, we can't notate what they're learning and how they're learning. But what we're doing is we're opening up their brains so that when he goes off, maybe something that he decided in lighting would end up coming up at some physics thing, if that makes sense to people.
Well, I think for every school to believe that all our students are going to college, you're in denial. I don't think so. And I always had problem with our mission before where they say that 100% of our students are going to college. No. Statistically, it won't happen. And it's not happening. But what are we going to do to those students who are not getting there? I have a kid who would say that I work out in a horse farm. I clean the horses and everything with the horse. Miss T, I'm not getting this in geometry. So what will you do with these kids? Just make a connection. Okay, it's a horse, the stable, can you see any geometry in there? And you start to think and teach them where they are at, and not to force them and whip them to go this high when you know that they cannot go that high. It will be frustrating for any teacher, any administrator, and for the kids themselves. We're killing the fun of learning. We should not.
I love that concept. Teach them where they're at. That's great.
I think it's also so important that we're all mindful that we're preparing a lot of our students for careers that don't exist yet. Right? That we don't know what they're going to be because the thing that they're going to be hasn't yet been invented. And so I think that's where our focus on things that translate to any profession, on these skills, on being creative, on being a good critical thinker, being able to collaborate and work in a group, to own your project, to approach things critically, to speak and to listen. I think that's where that all becomes so important, because we really are in a very different model. So where we've got to prepare them to be good at whatever it is they're going to do that we don't know about yet.
Plus, you don't know from beginning of the school year to the end where that one student that you think, well, I don't know about his future or her future, that what they'll be in just that 1 year that you have them. I've been so impressed with the changes that occur in students when they begin to ask those critical thinking questions, when they begin to explore art in their classes, when they begin to ask themselves, well, what am I creative at? What can I do? I didn't know I could do that. I had no idea. And then that just is a jumping point for the rest of their lives.
Great. Well, thank you all. We have a special treat before we wrap up here. So we're going to switch gears a little bit. Just stand by for one moment.
Ladies and gentlemen of all ages, we now bring you a special surprise. Please welcome students from Hawthorne High School as they model fabulous fashions designed and constructed using what we're calling the glamorous math, geometry.
Starting from here, this is Prabhu, Elizabeth, Selena, Jasmine, Cynthia, Martha, Kimberly, Faith. I'm so nervous. Ariana. Udochi. Sherry. And Alejandro.
Let's give them a big round
Thank
of
you,
applause.
ladies and
Thank
gentlemen.
you so much. Thank you, guys. Take a bow. Take a bow. Thank you. So much. If I could ask all of our panelists to stand up, I just want to say thank you to everybody. If you could stand up. Once again, we want to thank, let them walk out. Oh, I love it. I want to thank Sunshine Cavaluzzi. She teaches 12th graders at El Dorado High School in Placentia. Doris Riley, the 6th grade teacher at Rockdale Elementary in Eagle Rock. Carol Tansman is an elementary drama teacher at 10 different schools in LA Unified. And Dingai Tadena, math teacher at Hawthorne High School. Thank you all so much. I've got just a couple housekeeping things. You all can take a seat. Before we wrap up here, want to give a special thank you to the Crawford Family Forum production team, and especially, sorry, I'm double miking it here, to Janice Watchie-Hurst. This is one of her very last events here at KPCC. She's been here for over a decade. Janice, do you mind stepping forward? She's been such an inspiration. So much creativity and energy went into this event. Thank you so much, Janice. Thank you all for coming. We hope that you'll stick around to meet Priska, our new arts education reporter. And also we have the mobile booth out in the lobby to share your thoughts on Common Core. So please stick around and join us for that. Please stay in touch. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. Thank you. That's a wrap.